Good morning. My name is Robin DiPietro, and I am a program coordinator for OneOp. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session, Building Bridges, Helping Children Connect Across Differences. In case you're joining us for the first time, I'd like to give you a brief tour of our webinar platform so you can find your way around. Hopefully, you're currently able to view the slides that we're sharing. If you're unable to see them or have any other difficulties, please email us at contact@oneop.org for tech support. And I will put that in the chat here in just a minute. As some of you've already done, we look forward to having you join us in the chat pod for conversation and questions. To embed the chat pod so you don't miss any links or conversations, simply place your cursor over the shared slides. You'll then see a toolbar pop up across the bottom of your screen, and from there, just click the chat bubble icon. When typing comments or questions, please make sure that you select everyone from the response options drop-down menu so that everyone's able to view them in the chat pod. Note that the slides and the resources are available for download on the event page for today's session. We'll be covering continuing education information at the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned at the end if you're interested in continuing education credits or a certificate of attendance. Thank you for joining us as we continue our partnership with the Department of Defense and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to expand the readiness, knowledge, and networks of the professionals supporting our military service members and their families. The views expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the official policy of the Defense Department, U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Government, or OneOp. The mention of any entity or product is for informational purposes only. Today, we have with us Dr. Lori Meyer, who is an associate professor who teaches early intervention and early childhood special education courses in the special education program at the University of Vermont. Her scholarship focuses on young children's physical development, disparities in developmental screening, and equitable early childhood policies and practices for inclusion. Dr. Meyer aims to improve early childhood outcomes and remove structural and systemic barriers that create disparities for marginalized young children and their families. Before I turn things over to Dr. Meyer, you may want to be sure that you have a copy of the slides that can be found at the webinar event page, which the link is there in the chat for you under event materials. At this time, I'm going to mute my microphone so that Dr. Meyer can begin the presentation.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Let's start by reviewing the learning objectives. So my intention is that after our time together, you will be able to identify and know how to implement at least 3 practical strategies for guiding kindergarten through 5th grade neurodiverse students in developing meaningful friendships and fostering positive peer interactions. Articulate effective methods for educating neurotypical peers on understanding and connecting with neurodiverse children, promoting empathy and inclusion in the classroom and other group settings. Learn how to design and facilitate supportive group dynamics that enhance social-emotional learning and collaboration among all children, recognizing and valuing diverse cognitive profiles within peer relationships. Okay, let's get started with a poll. How many webinars in the OneOp series Uniquely Wired have you attended or viewed on demand? A, none. B, 1 to 3. C, 3 to 5. Or more than 5. Okay, excellent. We're seeing for some of you, this is your first webinars, or some of you, the other half, about 1 to 3, and then there is a small group that has seen more than 5. Okay, excellent. Today's talk can be viewed alone, but it extends and builds upon previous webinars in the series. I highly encourage you to view them, and a hyperlink to the series is on the slide and is also available on the OneOp website in the additional resource section for this webinar, along with all the resources mentioned in today's talk. Okay, for those who this is your first webinar centering neurodiversity, let's do a quick review. What is neurodiversity? Neurodiversity is a natural evolutionary sound variation in human neurobiology. Being neurodiverse is valuable, and being neurodiverse is not a deficit. There are many neurotypes associated with neurodiversity. Examples include ADHD, autism, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia, pathological demand avoidance, tic disorders, including Tourette syndrome. Additionally, those with mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and more are identifying as neurodivergent. Also, those with intellectual disability and Down syndrome, and people with chronic health conditions such as brain injuries, multiple sclerosis, or Parkinson's disease may identify as neurodivergent as well. Now, to change our focus for a minute, enter into the chat what image comes to mind when you think about a bridge. Okay, ooh, a resilient bridge. Thanks, Amy. What else? What image comes to mind? Okay, connection. All right, here we go. Tall, long, strong, a steel structure that spans two borders and lasts a lifetime. I have to say that growing up, I spent many weekends visiting my grandparents who lived in Chicago. So those iconic steel bridges that span the Chicago River are usually the images of bridges that come to my mind first. So for our time together today, I want us to think about those bridges that you have in mind, those strong structures that are resilient, strong, that last a lifetime. And I also want us to think about a different type of bridge that you may not have thought about before. So what you see here is a hand-woven grass bridge high in the Peruvian Andes that is rebuilt annually by a community using ancient Inca engineering techniques. People working together in unison. It is not just a structure, but a collaborative process symbolizing connection, community, and continuous effort. My intention is to weave imagery of this incredible grass bridge that is structurally strong, like steel, but is flexible and it's intimately created by an entire community together. So as we discuss techniques and approaches to building bridges between children who are neurodiverse and neurotypical, let's keep this image in mind. Traditional classroom and school models can often leave neurodivergent students isolated, with gaps of understanding and connection between them and their neurotypical peers. This creates a social chasm in the learning environment. As previously stated, neurodiversity is a natural variation in human neurobiology, embracing the diversity of minds, brains, and neurocognition as valuable, not a deficit. As such, each unique neurocognitive profile is a valuable and essential strand to the strength of our whole community bridge. Before any ropes can span the chasm, as leaders who want to create that bridge, we must establish some strong, stable anchor points and foundational supports on both sides. A neurodiversity affirming culture is the bedrock, that stable ground from which our woven connections will extend. So it might require us to shift perspectives. A A neurodiversity affirming approach challenges views of neurodiversity as a deficit to be cured or fixed and promotes acceptance and understanding instead. We are all a heterogeneous constellation of differences in abilities and strengths. Okay, so I think let's look at this chat for a moment. How might a neurodiversity affirming perspective transform the way you think about a child's unique contributions to your classroom or group? Take a moment and share one positive impact that you foresee. We can consider neurodiversity as the diverse, strong strands of grass in that Inca bridge, each a natural and valuable variation in human neurobiology. If we shift our perspective in that way, what is one positive impact you foresee seeing in your classroom communities or school communities? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, designing interactions with multiple intelligences in mind almost guarantees aha moments for participants. So really thinking about the multiple ways to engage learners, for them to share what they know, that students and everyone can think outside the box and share novel ideas that others may not consider, valuing that others' inputs. Thank you for sharing and continue to think on this. I think that we are getting settled in to this neurodiversity affirming mindset, which is really going to be helpful for today's conversation. Thank you. Yeah, bringing outliers more into the fold, maybe more into the community, more into belonging. Thank you. Thank you. These are wonderful. Continue to keep adding to the chat. So my talk is grouped into 3 parts today. The first part will review laying the groundwork, such as neurodiversity affirming education, creating safe and caring environments. In the second part, we'll discuss bridging differences. So using practices like peer-mediated interventions or PMIs, explicit social skills instruction via video modeling, fostering empathy through perspective taking, and designing supportive group dynamics and collaborative learning. And for the last part, we'll be sure to save time and to assure a resilient bridge by providing time for questions and answers. But please do feel free to place questions in the chat throughout our time together. Okay, we'll get started with part 1, laying the groundwork. Neurodiversity affirming education is the stable bedrock from which our woven connections will extend. Teaching that diverse brains are natural variations, not deficits, fostering genuine peer-to-peer connection and reducing stigma. A neurodiversity affirming approach teaches students that there are many ways people think, learn, and experience the world, reducing stigma and building a foundation for genuine peer-to-peer connection. Communication difficulties between peers can stem from a mismatch in neurotype known as the double empathy problem. The double empathy problem shifts the perspective and burden that communication difficulties are solely the fault of neurodivergent individuals to foster mutual understanding and responsibility for communication difficulties across neurotypes. For example, starting on the left side of this slide, an autistic person may struggle to read between the lines. They may have successful interactions with other autistic people. They might feel pressure to mask to fit in with neurotypical people, or they may struggle to manage sensory distractions. On the other side, a non-autistic person may misinterpret autistic communication style. They may have successful interactions with other neurotypical people. They might make incorrect assumptions about autism, or they may benefit from social settings designed for neurotypical people. Overall, the problem is shared. Both struggle to understand each other's differences, like thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. To further describe the double empathy problem, this is a quote from occupational therapist Meg Proctor. Meg says, "We talk so much about how autistic kids struggle with perspective taking and social skills, but the truth is that non-autistic people have a really hard time taking the perspective of autistic people and using the social skills that help them feel at ease." And neurodiversity affirming lessons can take a multitude of formats and use a variety of materials such as classroom books, puppets, role plays, short videos, or group discussions to introduce concepts of diverse brains and different ways of thinking. Neurodiversity affirming lessons are one way to help all children learn new perspectives. A wonderful resource in classrooms or schools are neurodiversity affirming programs like LEANS, which stands for Learning About Neurodiversity at School. The LEANS program is designed to teach neurodiversity concepts to primary school students ages 8 to 11 and has shown to increase knowledge and positive attitudes about neurodiversity among participants. At the LEANS website that is included in the additional webinar resources and is in the chat right now, people can download a free resource pack that includes a teacher handbook to implement this program. It includes posters, stories, activities, and videos. So if you're wondering about a great place to start with neurodiversity affirming lessons, I highly recommend checking out the LEANS resource. All About Me lessons are another way to encourage students to share their unique interests, strengths, and preferences to normalize differences and create common ground for communicating and learning. There are a multitude of free and for-pay files available with a quick search in your favorite internet browser that you could use and apply to your classroom or school-wide settings. And there's just a few examples up here on the slide. Providing direct instruction, or in other words, intentionally teaching and explaining concepts linked to neurodiversity, like different students' sensory needs. For example, why a classmate might wear headphones, or communication styles using age-appropriate materials may be necessary for some learners. So for example, you may need to directly teach that in your classroom, differences are celebrated, that accommodations and modifications occur for everyone who needs them to make work and learning more accessible, and that all learning preferences are valid, even if they are louder or more active than usually considered ideal for learning environments. The double empathy problem, which I mentioned earlier, is one concept that may require direct instruction. Children, as well as some adults, may need additional support in understanding that individuals use different communication styles, have different social norms, and may hold differing underlying contextual expectations. The neurotypical majority may frequently misunderstand or misperceive neurodivergent individuals, just as neurodivergent individuals may misunderstand neurotypical individuals. What's essential to foster is that there can be mutual misunderstanding in cross-neurotype interactions. This short story that I'm about to show you from NeuroWild is a nice example of something that could be used to teach children or adults about the double empathy problem. So let's look at it together. So here we see squirrels. And so squirrels have no problem communicating and making friends with other squirrels. And they're chatting, I'm just not sure what we're going to do with all these nutshells. Another says, maybe the beavers could help. Great idea. Let's ask them. And beavers have no problem communicating and making friends with other beavers. And the beaver says, hey, we could really use some nutshells for the dam. Ooh, the squirrels probably have loads. We could ask them. But when squirrels and beavers try to communicate, squirrel, 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 beaver, 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 miscommunication occurs. Now, whose fault is it? Who is responsible for fixing it? So you can see how this could be a great conversation starter with children of all ages. Collectively, there are consequences of misunderstanding for both neurotypical and neurodiverse individuals. When neurotypical individuals struggle to interpret communication from neurodiverse individuals, they may perceive them as unfriendly. And this could lead to exclusion, marginalization, or influence a neurodivergent individual to mask or camouflage their traits to conform with social norms, which can lead to negative mental health outcomes. So this is part of what makes teaching adults and students about the double empathy problem important in neuro-affirming environments. Another way to directly teach is through role plays. So here's an example of an hypothetical conversation that highlights the double empathy problem. So here we have two boys, 7 years old, both in first grade. Ahmed is neurotypical. Leo is neurodiverse. Ahmed can be described as energetic, relying on quick social cues, and expects reciprocal eye contact and shared conversation. Whereas Leo is a more literal language user, sometimes struggling with processing spontaneous social invitation and finds direct eye contact stressful. So the setting is recess, and Leo is playing with a collection of train cars and tracks that he has brought from home. So I'll start by reading the comic strip illustration and then unpack how you could further explain the illustration to promote understanding of the double empathy problem. Okay, so we see Ahmed approaching Leo and he says, hey, what you doing? That looks kind of boring. Want to come play tag? Hurry up, we're starting. So what we see is Ahmed assumes quick, spontaneous social interaction and swiftly interprets Leo's focus on his trains as boring. There's a bit of a pause before Leo responds. He says, this is the Burlington Northern tank car. It is not boring. Here, Leo exhibits delayed processing and a literal interpretation of boring. He lacks eye contact, which signals disinterest to Ahmed. To which Ahmed replies, never mind. Do you want to play tag? Ahmed misinterprets that delayed response as intentional rudeness or lack of social skills on Leo's part. So he tries his initial invitation again. To which Leo responds, my train tracks need to be sorted by length. How long should I make the train track? We see Leo redirecting the conversation back to his interests. He expresses a direct need, sorting, rather than acknowledging or responding to Ahmed's social invitation to play tag. To which we see Ahmed reply, oh, you're not answering me. I'm going to find someone else who wants to play with me. So Ahmed perceives Leo's behavior and interests as incompatible with his own, and Ahmed ends the interaction, which creates this empathy disconnect and ultimately exclusion. To which we find Leo thinking and wondering. He seemed really upset about the track lengths. Maybe he doesn't like to measure and sort things. So we see Leo processing and attempting to make sense of Ahmad's response based on the last literal topic, the train track length, completely missing the social context of Ahmad's frustration over his refusal, Leo's refusal to play tag. So in this hypothetical conversation, there was a reciprocal misunderstanding. So we see Ahmed, who interpreted Leo's silence as disinterest and expected Leo to respond in a typical social manner to his verbal and nonverbal cues in his invitation to play tag. Whereas we see Leo interpreted Ahmed's invitation through his own lens of interest and engagement, focusing on his trains and not recognizing the social expectation to respond. In this situation, both children interpreted the interaction based on their own communication styles and preferences, which led each to feel misunderstood. All right, let's return to the chat. Imagine that Ahmed and Leo are two students in your classroom or school. As an instructional leader, what is one way you could help build mutual understanding, these neurodiversity affirming anchor points between Leo and Ahmed in this example, so that they are both responsible rather than placing the burden solely on Leo to adapt his communication style? What ideas do you have? I've got my sand timers with me today, so I'm going to give us enough time and space to think about this together and respond in the chat. Take your time. Okay. Well, one of the ideas that comes to my mind first is back from that really just initial beginning point where we saw Ahmed quickly come up to Leo and express his judgment and feelings about the interests of Leo, which were the trains. So focusing more on teaching respect for each other's interests so that Ahmad wouldn't approach Leo immediately saying that what he was interested in was boring, but rather taking interest in Leo's trains, and likewise teaching Leo to take interest in Ahmed's desire to play tag. So bringing that focus on shared interests or appreciating others' interests and not passing judgment. Here we go. Emphasizing verbally reflecting each youth's response and helping each youth hear each other's point of view. Excellent. Yeah. So working together to make sure that youths, what they're sharing is being understood on both sides. Excellent. Thank you. Now, a second way we can prepare the landscape and lay the groundwork for a solid and strong connection between children is creating safe and caring environments, which are key to ensuring accessibility for all, focusing on participation rather than conformity. Preparing the landscape means clearing obstacles and proactively ensuring access and engagement for all. This involves creating an environment that meets the needs of diverse learners, not expecting them to change their inherent nature to fit a rigid design. A framework that can assist you in doing this work is Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. UDL is a framework to guide the design of learning environments that are accessible, inclusive, and challenging for every learner. UDL aims to change the design of the environment rather than situate the problem as a perceived deficit within the learner. My favorite cartoon really emphasizing the idea of UDL is one created by Dr. Michael Giangreco that we see here on the right side of the slide, especially as we enter snow season in Vermont. So in the lower left-hand corner, we see an individual who uses a wheelchair saying, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And then the person shoveling the school steps says, "All these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you." To which the student replies, "But if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. So this really emphasizes the physical environment and how putting accessibility first and starting with accessibility for all, such as clearing the ramp, would be a more universal, accessible approach than first clearing off a path that only works for some students. UDL really asks educators to think about multiple ways to engage learners universally, how we can represent information in multiple ways, and multiple ways that students can express and show what they know and can do. If you're interested in learning more about UDL, I highly recommend checking out the CAS website, which is available in our resource section. Yeah, could a great way for creating that safe and caring environment that's universally accessible for all. Remember, the focus is on the school or the classroom environment changing, not the child. Inclusive education involves creating schools and classrooms to meet diverse students' needs and prioritizing changing the environment to promote participation rather than changing children's behaviors because they differ from social norms. So when we consider creating safe and caring and inclusive environments for all learners, we may choose to focus on the social environment and the physical environment. Focusing on the social environment, teachers can find ways to celebrate neurodiversity and promoting an organizational culture that values neurodiversity among staff, families, and the community. This could be accomplished in many ways. One example is providing professional development for multiple groups of individuals. So, for example, teachers, families, children, support staff, bus drivers, anyone who interacts and engages with learners at school about neuro-inclusive approaches. When thinking about the physical environment, teachers can ensure classroom and school spaces are free from excessive stimuli, as well as providing appropriate visual supports in clearly defined spaces. This could include sensory-friendly zones. These would be spaces intentionally designed to reduce overwhelming sensory input and to create a calming, comfortable environment for people who are sensitive to sensory stimulation. Another example is the creation of flexible learning spaces. So these are school or classroom spaces and approaches designed by teachers to be easily adapted to different teaching methods, learning preferences, and student needs to promote their engagement, creativity, and inclusion by allowing the environment to change in response to what learners need at any given moment. So this is really where those approaches and that UDL type of thinking comes into play. So teachers may be thinking about different ways that students prefer to engage. So for example, do they like to would they prefer to engage one-on-one with a peer, or would they rather collaborate using an online tool rather than traditional small group work? Would they rather show what they know and can do through one-on-one dialogues or video presentations, written reports, instead of doing an in-person, in-class presentation? And do students need that flexibility of due dates or having additional time allotted for activities? So really taking into consideration the physical environment and the setup of lessons so that we can be as supportive to sensory needs and be as flexible as possible. Overall, laying the groundwork, focusing on neurodiversity affirming education, and creating safe and caring environments can have a significant impact on well-being. That is, greater understanding and positive attitudes toward neurodiversity can lead to increased acceptance of neurodiversity and improved well-being for neurodivergent individuals by reducing stigma. Okay, let's chat. Thinking about laying the groundwork in your environment, What is one thing you could implement to change the physical and social environment in which you work to be more accommodating for neurodiverse learners? Okay, great. We got one idea. Asking how individuals would like to have an area set up, right? So asking for preferences and then speaking with parents to help with the flow of their routines. So you can match routines that are comfortable and familiar at home or in the community back into the school setting. Those are excellent ideas. Both talking to the social and physical aspects with that one. Oh, here we go. Alternatives to school chairs for reading time. Yeah, seeing pads on chairs that swivel and help youth move in their assigned seats so that they can be active in their bodies, yet still being in their seat, which could be less distracting for peers in the classroom, but then students get that movement and sensory input that they need. Wonderful. A powerful thing that I've seen in a school recently that I visited, they created a space that was very calming. Many of the teachers had calming areas in their classroom that were where there's a lot of natural light and where there's not a lot of sensory input, but sometimes it's hard to create a space that's 100% calm in a busy early elementary classroom. So the school created a learning space that was very void of sensory input, but had natural light, had many different seating and desk arrangements. And it was a space that all students and the school could access. It was available to anyone who needed it, which was very inclusive. So it wasn't designed for neurodivergent individuals, for example. All right. And thank you, Robin, for including the webinar discussing flexible seating and slides with some visual examples. Excellent. Okay, now we're ready for part 2, bridging differences. Before we explore practical strategies for building connections between peers, and what are some initial ideas you have for how peers themselves or structured collaborative activities can be leveraged to build differences and foster deeper understanding and friendship among all children in your setting? So this is an opportunity. You don't have to enter anything into the chat. Just take a minute to pause and reflect. This is just a self-reflection moment for you. Okay, about 20 more seconds. All right. If we recall the Inca grass bridge analogy, long grasses are woven and braided into these flexible yet strong ropes that are then thrown across the chasm to create the beginning of the bridge's construction. So with this in mind, if we consider all the children in our classrooms and schools as different blades of grass, how can we actively weave connections and understanding that form that strong yet flexible bridge? The first practice we will discuss are peer-mediated interventions, or PMIs for short. So PMIs are these like initial guide ropes that are carefully strung across the canyon's gap, where peers with instruction are skilled weavers who help establish the first crucial connections, inviting others to join in the bridge building and connecting. PMIs are evidence-based practices in which neurotypical peers initiate and sustain social interactions with neurodivergent classmates. PMIs aim to create that natural and authentic social environment for children to practice social skills, strengthen social skills, and connect and form relationships together. The first step of a peer-mediated intervention is to teach and coach peers a variety of skills that can help them in that connecting and in that conversation or in that communication or in that peer-to-peer interaction. So some of the skills that could be taught to peers include establishing mutual attention with a classmate, talking about ongoing activities with their classmate, and responding to communication partners that they are paired with. So this might include teaching peers about a neurodiverse learner's communication device or a communication style. So this is an example from NeuroWild that could help start the conversation and instruction on how some people communicate in other ways, such as using a device or signing with their hands, writing, typing, and other forms of augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. So you might use this tool to begin the conversation with peers about different forms of communication styles, especially when you're talking about how you might establish mutual attention or how you might respond to a communication partner in a way that they can understand and access. One example of a peer-mediated intervention is the stay, play, talk intervention. So the goal of the stay, play, talk intervention is to increase and extend a child's frequency of social interactions with peers while minimizing the need for adult support. So for this intervention, adults intentionally teach peer buddies to stay and attend to the play of a focused child, play with the focused child with similar toys in similar ways, and talk or comment on the focused child's play. And here's some visuals that could be used when teaching peers, the stay, play, talk visuals. And Robin has put the link to a webinar about making new friends that talks more about the stay, play, talk. And there's a link to visuals like this that could be used for instruction in our additional resources handout for today's event. Okay, let's watch an example of how classroom teachers taught those skills, the stay, play, talk skills, during a whole group lesson.
Stay, play, and talk, just so you guys remember, okay? So Miss Joni's gonna go find somewhere to play, and we're gonna see if I'm gonna be a good buddy, okay? Okay?
She's fat. No, you're not. She's not.
Am I being a good buddy right now?
No.
No, I'm not following her. I need to go follow Miss Joni, right? Because that's staying with Miss Joni. Am I being a good buddy now?
Yeah.
Because I'm staying with her.
Miss Johnny, she's still following us. Yeah.
I'm following her. Yeah, I'm being a good buddy.
Yeah, you're a good buddy. Dicer, yes. Dicer. It's a dicer.
Okay, so hopefully that helps you visualize and get to see what the stay, play, talk practices are and how you could teach that in a large group setting to young children. So When using peer-mediated interventions, it's important to consider a few things. So to start, we can consider individualization. So that is to adapt PMIs to suit a neurodiverse learner's interests and strengths, creating engaging and reinforcing activities for all students and building on the common ground for communication and sharing. Another piece to consider are reciprocal partnerships. So that is ensuring that PMIs foster reciprocal partnerships between children rather than positioning neurotypical peers solely as the helpers and neurodiverse learners as only being someone who is helped, which can inadvertently stigmatize them. Also, keeping in mind that PMIs can be effective when there are two neurodiverse children involved and partner together as well. Another practice that brings peers together is the use of the Neurodivergent Peer Support Kit, or NEST for short. So this is a toolkit which was designed by neurodivergent individuals with the intention to embrace and affirm difference, celebrate diversity, build community, and cultivate self-advocacy through activities-based peer support. NEST aims for student-led groups, allowing neurodivergent young people to connect with like-minded peers, discuss neurodivergence, and build community, for example, building a complex Lego structure or creating art together. So groups can engage in a variety of activities such as board games, role-playing, seasonal events, crafts, book clubs, presentations on interests, or invited guest speakers. Adults can help facilitate and support students to lead the group, help plan activities, and advocate for more neurodivergent inclusive school environments and rules. Initial research on NEST suggests several benefits, such as students report enjoying their time with peers and learning about neurodivergence, and facilitators also report positive impacts that go beyond the group itself and increasing neurodiversity awareness among school staff. Okay, before moving to our next practice that can help bridge differences, let's chat. What is one actionable strategy that you would teach students to initiate and, I'm sorry, let me start over. What is the one actionable strategy that you would teach students to initiate and sustain reciprocal friendships? I think one of my favorite practices links back to those all about me sheets and helping children learn more about one another so that they can find commonalities in areas where they might share similarities, whether it's favorite characters or shows, sometimes family structures. Hello, bingo. Oh, I'd love to know more about how that works in the chat, if you're willing to share a little bit more about that. Encouraging children to offer compliments to one another. Just extending that kindness. Well, this is not a time-limited response. So if there are other ideas that pop into your mind as you're listening about practices that you use to teach students to initiate and sustain reciprocal friendships together, please enter that into the chat so we can all learn. Oh, thanks, Robin. Okay, a quick Hello Bingo card. Excellent. That sounds like a really fun game with fun facts, and children have to walk around to find someone who is like the same color as them. Ah, what is their favorite foods? Very nice. Oh, yeah. When you're taking attendance, that gives you a great opportunity to ask them to share about a favorite. Yeah, there's so many ways to find and start a budding friendship. And a lot of times it comes around those favorite things. These are all really good examples. Please, please feel free to keep them coming. Um, all learners to learn skills that will help them in their peer connections may need more explicit social skills instruction. And one way to provide that explicit social skills instruction is through the use of video modeling. So video modeling acts as a detailed blueprints or demonstrations for weaving specific social strands or moments together. It shows exactly how to form strong, effective connections, respecting individual styles and preferences. So back to the Inca bridge analogy, video self-modeling is like reviewing your own weaving technique in order to refine it. So video modeling, or VM, and video self-modeling, or VSM, are effective evidence-based tools for explicit social skills instruction. So using video modeling or video self-modeling can help neurodiverse learners practice and internalize skills. For example, greeting a friend or asking to join in a game. We also can think about neurotypical individuals sometimes use video self-modeling too for things like watching themselves do a presentation to then adjust body movements, pace, or style, or singing or practicing a dance routine before a performance. So both video modeling and video self-modeling has been found to promote skill acquisition, with skills maintained over time and transferred across people and settings. So it's important to note too that the video clips that are used with video modeling and video self-modeling are typically pretty brief. But when using the practice of video modeling or video self-monitoring, it's essential to keep neurodiversity affirming implementation in mind. So first, keep in mind to prioritize autonomy. So focus video modeling on essential functions and social behaviors of value to neurodiverse individuals. This helps to avoid neurodiverse individuals feeling that they need to mask or camouflage traits that can be linked to harmful mental health outcomes. Second, use collaborative goal setting. So this means involving neurodiverse individuals in determining goals linked to video modeling. This aims to ensure that video modeling procedures do not seek to erase neurodiverse individuals' unique characteristics. The third thing is to remember research findings on individualization and social validity, which has shown that personalized videos tend to be more effective, and neurodiverse individuals find video modeling to be socially valid and acceptable support. Okay, let's chat once more, focus on video modeling specifically. So how can you ensure that the goals and procedures for these blueprints or video models or video self-modeling are of genuine value to neurodiverse learners? Actively involve them in the design and avoid any pressure to mask their authentic selves. What kind of steps or actions do you think is important for teachers to take in order to make sure that the skills that are being taught through video modeling or video self-modeling are of genuine value to neurodiverse learners? One of the things that I think of first is that a lot of times children might have peers in their classes who they really desire to be closer friends with. And so that can be really motivating for students to enhance their skills in order to strengthen that friendship and that relationship. And so using that as a starting point to have conversations with neurodiverse learners, maybe reflecting on past experiences, what's gone well with their peer, what maybe hasn't gone well, and what they think could be a skill to work on to enhance that relationship, or what do they think would help them develop a closer friendship with that person. And so, using that as a starting place to identify which skills the learner really values and wants to work on, and focusing on a really specific relationship that could be highly motivating. All right, we are on to our third practice for bridging differences, and this is fostering empathy through perspective taking. Going back to the Inca bridge analogy, understanding the terrain and its nuances on both sides of the canyon, which are essential for a stable bridge. Focusing empathy by helping all children, especially neurotypical peers, grasp perspectives different from their own, ensures that our bridge is flexible and responsive to everyone's needs. Understanding individual experiences can reduce misunderstandings and stigma, as well as promote inclusive interactions. So one approach for fostering empathy is to use simple narratives to describe situations from a neurodiverse child's point of view. For example, sensory overload, communication preferences, explaining why a child might be upset by a sudden loud noise. These narratives help peers understand that reactions may not be personal. Social stories in particular are an evidence-based approach for improving responses of students with autism with accurate social information. So NeuroWild, which we've referenced a few times today, has a nice resource, which we're providing a link to, on how to create social stories and how to write those social stories for neurodivergent children. So we're going to just click through this to give you an example. So it talks about that social stories should clearly explain options to children. It gives you an understanding of what social stories should not include, what you have less emphasis on, such as teaching masking skills to neurodivergent children. And it gives you an opportunity to analyze stories and emphasizing that the purpose of the social story isn't to control a student. It's to rather be more supportive, to give them information, and to give them information that's going to help them navigate that social situation. So that's a great resource that I recommend you checking out when you get the chance. Another practice is using what-if conversations. So what-if conversations prompt students to imagine how they might feel in another person's shoes. For example, what if your favorite toy was moved without you knowing? How would that make you feel? Children's books are an excellent support for exploring these topics and starting conversations. So a really phenomenal resource that I'll share with you in just a moment to give you an idea of what it looks like comes from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, or NCPMI. And on their website, they have a searchable database of children's books that promote social emotional skills such as feelings and emotions, friendships, kindness, and problem solving. So what you see here is two of the resources that are available from NCPMI. One is a handout, a children's book list that includes diverse examples that can be used to teach the social emotional skills that I just mentioned and more. And so you'll see columns on the left-hand side, the title of the books, and on the right-hand side is the book author. And then if you navigate to NCPMI's website, they have that searchable a book database. So you can use the database to search for specific feelings, different categories, different age groups, to really center in which books might be most salient for you to use when you're teaching a specific feeling or a different age group. So I highly recommend that you check that out when you get the chance. Circle time or group meetings are excellent opportunities for empathetic dialogues to take place. This means dedicating regular time for students to share feelings and experiences, fostering a safe space for questions to explore how they and others feel in similar and different situations. Teachers are creating a space essentially where it is okay to ask questions and okay to simply listen. So, thinking about universal design for learning and being really inclusive, creating spaces where it's appropriate and acceptable to choose not to share one's feelings in that moment is also salient. As well as, thinking about providing options for children to share later or with specific individuals, whether that's a particular child or a particular adult. So in a way that they can still share their thoughts and share their feelings and be heard, but in a way that is inclusive, accessible, and more available for them to participate and engage. Another practice that fosters empathy is the Creating Compassion intervention, which is an art-based, empathy-focused, social emotional learning program for young children in grades kindergarten through grade 3. It has two focuses. One is on an empathy-centric focus. And so the program targets empathy development, which is considered foundational for broader social emotional learning skills like social awareness, relationship skills, self-management, and responsible decision-making. It also has a creative arts integration. So the intervention blends creative activities such as dance, photography, mixed media, collage, slime art, and drawing with explicit behavioral modeling of empathy-specific pro-social behaviors. So features of this intervention that may be attractive to teachers includes, first, the empathy-related behaviors are taught through role-playing, modeling, and positive descriptive feedback, emphasizing skills like perspective taking, emotional regulation, and cooperation. Second, the activities are designed for settings with limited resources, and the program can be embedded into existing art instructional time, making it efficient and scalable. Third, the art projects are collaborative, requiring children to work together, fostering opportunities for that social bonding and positive identity development. Okay, lots of opportunities to chat today. So thinking about using social stories or what if conversations, how could you use a social story or what if conversation to explain a neurodivergent child's experience? For example, sensory sensitivities or communication preferences in a way that builds empathy rather than just knowledge. I'll give you a moment to think about that one. So as you think of that, feel free to enter it into the chat. I know from personal experience, especially working with younger children, the use of the what if conversations really build empathy, especially by asking children to reflect on how they felt or experience a particular moment. For example, when they were excluded from group play, or what it felt like when they were learning something new for the first time, really helping them tap into themselves, their personal experiences, how they thought, how they felt, what their actions were in that moment. So creating that opportunity to share, and then connecting that to taking the perspective of their classmates and considering how they might think or feel or behave in a really similar situation, but starting with that own lived experience of a child first, I've always found to be really helpful. And being able to do that in a large group setting or a small group or even a one-on-one setting, the what if conversations can really be used across ages and across instructional formats. But I'm curious to hear what you think too. So the chat will stay open. Feel free to continue and contribute. Okay, we are at our last practice for bridging differences, and that is designing supportive group dynamics and cooperative learning. So coming back to the ink of bridge analogy, this is the collective weaving of the main bridge structure itself. So each child with their unique strengths, passions, and cognitive profiles, those grass fibers, contributes to the strength and beauty of the entire interconnected bridge, ensuring it's stable and accessible for all who cross. So one well-established practice in designing supportive group dynamics and learning is using structured cooperative learning. So this involves using small, heterogeneous student groups to work toward a common goal where each member is responsible for their own learning and for helping their teammates and classmates. So this structure ensures all students, including those with diverse cognitive profiles, have a defined, valuable role and contribute to the group's success. When using cooperative learning or anytime you're creating a group experience, really take time to consider how you can harness passions and strengths of your students. So this means integrating students' passions and strengths into a wide variety of classroom or school activities, such as classroom themes, teaching activities and opportunities, games that are played, or even visual supports that are used. Collectively, if we take this approach of focusing on passions and strengths of our students, it can really foster their participation, their engagement, their initiative, positive interactions, and the development of positive self-esteem and autonomy. When designing group experiences, teachers might consider also the use of technology to bring students together, such as using inclusive joint media experiences. So this means designing collaborative technology experiences that are inclusive for children with and without disabilities. So an inclusive joint media engagement, or JME, could be students playing an online game together, or even watching a video or using an app while interacting with each other. So this concept emphasizes social interaction, communication, and collaboration during media use, and really fostering shared experiences and learning opportunities. So one example is an interactive tablet application called Includo Classroom, which promotes inclusive play and social emotional learning among neurodiverse groups in kindergarten classrooms. It allows children to connect with one another through shared experiences like picture taking and social emotional activities. So key conditions when doing or using inclusive joint media engagement experiences, such as the Includo Classroom application, is that it allows children to make meaning in ways that match their abilities and needs, For example, if there's an interest in Pokemon, the Pokemon Go app can be used during opportunities for free play. It's an empowering type of engagement and enables children to demonstrate their strengths. For example, choosing roles that fit their skills within the play. And then lastly, there's a variety of interactional and instructional resources that could be embedded into this type of media engagement, such as adult support or assistive technologies and other scaffolding to ensure that children can connect. During joint media engagement experiences, adults do need to intervene just to ensure there's an equitable participation in turn taking, especially when media that's novel or new to children is used for the first time. But what I find most promising about the creation of technology apps like Includal is that app developers are really starting to work on and think more deeply about designing and evaluating apps that are aimed at facilitating inclusive play between children with mixed neurodiversity. And teachers can replicate several features of the Includal application without having direct access to it. So, you could use inspiration from Includal to ask children to share about what makes them feel proud or sad or excited. There's a lot of different discussion prompts that are included that you could build off of. Teachers can also organize activities where children work in pairs or small groups to complete tasks, like creating art or taking photos together. It also points to other freely available apps that share similar goals. For example, one of my favorites are the apps that are available from PBS Kids, such as the Daniel Tiger's Guess the Feelings game. So, looking for those type of joint media experiences that really will allow children to interact and engage and, show off their strengths and passions together. Teachers may also consider the use of digital tools for collaboration. And again, this kind of taps into what we've talked about previously with universal design for learning and thinking about when there might be a digital tool that might encourage students' participation or engagement or showing what they know in a way that really works for them. So for example, using collaborative online platforms like Google Docs for group projects and real-time collaboration could be beneficial. Small group discussion using digital tools on specific topics has been shown to be really effective in fostering interaction, critical thinking, and cooperation among students with disabilities. So really remembering that, as teachers, creating flexible learning environments, seeking to engage learners by offering a variety of choices for participating and demonstrating what they know, digital tools might be helpful. This could extend to the use of interactive whiteboards online, as well as thinking about the type of equipment that could support engagement and use of those tools as well. So whether students access that technology on a computer or a tablet, or in some cases a cell phone, thinking what's going to be most age appropriate and school appropriate for individual children. Okay, this is our last chat. Thank you so much for your contributions today. It's really been a pleasure learning alongside of you. So for our last chat together, share an idea for a collaborative learning activity. Maybe it's a collaborative learning activity that's more traditional in nature. Maybe it's a learning activity that taps into some sort of joint media engagement. But what's an idea that for a collaborative learning activity that intentionally integrates the diverse strengths and passions of all students, allowing every strand to contribute and be valued? What's something that you do that you can imagine doing that you think would really tap into diverse strengths and passions of all students? Okay, well, please continue to think on this one and enter it into the chat box as time allows. This will definitely date the webinar, but right now I know teachers are really tapping into students' engagement and love of the K-pop Demon Hunters. It seems to be a huge favorite, at least here in our neck of the woods, and teachers are trying to think about how they can integrate this into music, into art, into PE, into language lessons, writing stories. Children are so captivated by this, and it seems to span across ages, grades, and many students. So that might be something to think about, something that's collectively sweeping the nation, how you can incorporate that into everyday learning opportunities that integrate diverse strengths and passions of students. Okay, thank you so much for your engagement and contributions throughout today's talk. Our last part is assuring that resilient bridge. So whether your image of a bridge was more of that conventional steel bridge or the amazing Inca grass suspension bridge, let's ensure its resiliency and take some time for any additional questions that you might have. So remembering, to think about our collective future, our goal is to really create that strong, resilient Inca-style suspension bridge, an inclusive community where diverse children connect safely and meaningfully. This bridge, if we think of that image, is a testament to the power of collective effort in valuing every strand as unique. It really means, committing to a neurodiversity affirming practices that creates robust, inclusive communities where every single student can thrive. So I'm going to recap some of the key strategies that we've talked about today, and continue to put those questions into the chat as we review the key strategies together. So first, building anchor points and preparing the landscape, focusing on neurodiversity affirming education, inclusive environments, weaving those guide ropes like peer-mediated interventions, helping children follow the blueprints that can help them build strong connections with their peers, such as using video modeling, helping peers understand one another better, fostering empathy through perspective taking, and then creating that collective weave that can span chasms that sometimes seem exceptionally wide, creating lots of opportunities for supportive group dynamics and collaborative learning in your classroom environment. So by adapting these approaches, educators and service providers can promote inclusion, support children's rights, dignity, and well-being, and really leverage strengths to achieve meaningful goals for neurodiverse children. And remember, we're not trying to change the child to fit the environment. There's really a fundamental shift here in our perspective where we want to emphasize changing the environment to fit the child. And something that I just found really inspiring about the Inca Bridge is that every year it's cut down and rebuilt. So not that you have to rebuild your practices every year around this, especially if you're working to establish a culture that's neurodiversity affirming, but your children will change, your teachers will change, the context will change. And as such, we have to embrace continuous learning and continuous building. So this is an ongoing process of continuous learning, adapting our practices, embracing the richness that every neurodivergent child brings to our community, really seeking out neurodivergent voices and experiences to inform your practice. So like you said, tapping into families' knowledge and inviting them to share, inviting your students who are neurodivergent to contribute their thoughts into how the policies and practices and rules of your school or classroom operate and how they interact with how they feel and they perceive the world. Together, we can be that community that builds bridges that stand the test of time and that really connect all children across their wonderful differences. Okay, let's just chat. What is one concrete step you will commit to taking in your practice next week to actively modify the environment and interventions to fit the child, contributing to a more resilient bridge? Change that environment to better meet a child. I love that idea of a blank paper quilt blocks that children can color and sketch and collage and then stitch that together to put that up on the wall. Yeah, it's a great idea. All right, I see a question here too. What about circle time and having children create a continuous story where children are called upon to share what happens next to develop the storyline? There's no right or wrong answer with all input embraced. Oh, that's a fantastic idea. And I could just see that story really being, I could say, captivating to the class, where they might be thinking about it or thinking about who gets to contribute the next part or what direction it takes. And that can integrate a lot of early learning and learning standards as well between literacy, illustration. Okay, well, thank you so much for everyone today. Let me just bring it back. One more opportunity. Any questions or anything that you'd like to explore more?
There was one that kind of came to mind, and that was there's a lot of great ideas and resources here in today's talk, but sometimes we're also going up again, educators and professionals working with children are going up against pre-existing ideas that students may have heard repeatedly from outside of the immediate group community of which we're overseeing, right? So maybe they hear them from home or in the community or who knows, television, whatever. Do you have any ideas for how to simultaneously combat those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, Robin. Because children are influenced in a lot of different ways. And as they get older, they're very influenced by what they hear from their peers. And peers that can be really influenced by what they hear from their families or what they're accessing in media, whether that's online or anything that they're exposed to. I think, creating that safe space where there's trust built, where students can share their thoughts and what they know without judgment, and then meeting them where they are and providing them with more I wouldn't say more, but age appropriate information that might provide an alternative view to what they know or what they perceive in that moment, to help them see another side of the thing that they have brought up or are questioning. I don't know if I'm be really curious if others have ideas or if you've seen something too.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I think that it's one of the constant kind of spaces that we find ourselves in as professionals, right? Because kids, and students are with us for this much time during the day, and then they're also fully influenced by the rest of their day and what they interact with. So yeah, it's a constant kind of space to kind of try to navigate. So thank you. Great.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, we are going to move forward. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Dr. Meyer can get to them if we have some time. I want to get through some kind of housekeeping, continuing education information. But on the next slide, you'll see Dr. Meyer's contact information, and then I've also just placed it in the chat for you. We want to again thank you so much for being here and for sharing all this wonderful information with us. So if you have additional questions or want to reach out, feel free to use that email that's in the chat and on the screen there. We also want to invite everyone to join us on December 11th for the next webinar in our series, Uniquely Wired. This will be the last one of the series. And this webinar will equip participants with practical strategies to help teens navigate social interactions with peers who may learn in ways outside traditional norms. To register for this event on December 11th, please visit the website listed on the screen, and that is in the chat here. And this one in December, we'll have a focus on kind of building those friendship relationships between adolescents. Today was focused on building them between younger children, elementary age. And then in December, we'll cover the older crew. Today's webinar offers several different types of CE credits and a certificate of attendance for general use. To receive either of these items, all participants will need to complete a two-step process that includes an evaluation and a follow-up survey of some kind, depending on the type of CE you require. So what you will do is first, you will complete an evaluation. After that, you'll get a message on your screen where you can select a link for the type of CE you need or a certificate of attendance. And then you will be directed to another survey or post-test. Once you've completed that second item, a certificate will be automatically emailed to you within 24 to 48 hours. Some email providers might send that to your spam folder. Some of your organizations may block that because they think it's spam. So if you don't receive it, if it's not there, check those spam or junk folders and then just email us using that email address that you see on the screen there. And we can help you troubleshoot from there. At this point, the live audience is going to see a link to the evaluation posted into the chat as soon as I get my many screens figured out here. Okay, there you go. So those of you who are here live, you have that link in the chat and you will click on it, and you might need to copy and paste that into a new browser window, however. Those who are watching on demand, this link is available on the webinar event page. There is a purple button that looks like the one on the screen. As you scroll down, it's just underneath continuing education credit. So if you come back at a later time, that's where you would go, is to the webinar event page, the purple button, continuing education, and that will take you to where you need to be. If you receive an error message when you try to access the evaluation, take a minute to read it, please. Sometimes websites might be blocked by your settings or firewalls. If that's the case, you would need to contact your organization's IT department for assistance. If you still get the error message, take a screenshot and send it in an email to us so that we can help you troubleshoot from there. Yes. Amy, I see your question in the chat. Do you mean the presenter for today or the presenter from in December? Today's presenter was Dr. Lori Meyer. I'll just enter it here for you if that's what you meant. Okay. So if you have any questions about your CE or you need assistance, that email address is right there for you on the screen and just up ahead in the chat. So again, we want to thank you all for being here. We also want to thank Dr. Meyer for being here. Be sure to visit us at our website, oneop.org, to explore upcoming events, articles, resources, and more. And you can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'll stick around for a couple of minutes for those of you who might need to grab links or information from the chat. But we thank you again for attending and wish everyone a pleasant rest of your day.